Well, good morning and welcome to Overdevest Nurseries. It's a beautiful sunny day in springtime. It's a little on the breezy side, but as you see from the plants here in our display garden, spring has very definitely sprung. And this is an exciting time in gardening terms. There's lots of things going on. We're busy sending out plants to our network of partnering garden centres, and if you get a chance and you live in our region, that's the mid-Atlantic and northeastern states of the US, pop in and take a look, because I think there you're going to discover all sorts of really beautiful things that you might want to think about growing in your garden. Now, part of our activities here on the nursery is to try and help you be a little bit more successful with your gardening endeavours. And if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. But if you're a first-time viewer, I'd like to suggest that you think about subscribing to our channel, because we're busy posting new videos all the time, and whenever you're a subscriber, you'll find that as we post new ones, they'll turn up automatically in your feed. And if it just so happens that you like what we're telling you, it would be really great if you could kindly share the link with your friends and gardening acquaintances, but also perhaps hit the like button too, because that will help to make the information available for other people as well. Now, today we're going to plant a tree, a container grown tree, and I'm going to take you through the principles of the things to look for, how to go about it, and then how you can enjoy and have the satisfaction and reward of growing beautiful trees in your garden. Now, they say when you plant a tree, you plant it for the next generation. And with grand old specimens like oaks and beech, that is very definitely the case. It takes them a long time to grow up from a little seedling to those venerable, beautiful, noble specimens. But thankfully, today we have a wonderful selection of garden trees that we can plant in our gardens. Already buy them as fairly sizable specimens, as you see, and get an almost instant effect, which is kind of reassuring for the likes of us that hopefully we'll be able to enjoy them for a good few years before the tree outlives us. Now, if you want to go out and take a look around some of our partnering garden centres, you'll see a very nice selection of some of the trees like we have here. For instance, this is a multi-stem version of our native river birch. Multi-stem because it has several stems rising up from the earth and gives this lovely upright effect. Then there's lots of really good flowering crab apples. And this is a variety here called lollipop, and as the name describes, it grows like a lollipop, about 8 foot high by about 8 foot wide. I'm very fond of the purple leaf plums because you get the benefit of both lovely purple foliage like this and also nice spring flowers. And of course, you can't go too far down any road, any street, and you're likely to come across one of the most popular flowering cherries out there. This is Prunus quanzan, with its beautiful big double flowers that hang so graciously from the branches now at this time of year. And if you're looking for something that's a little bit more special than that with purple colored foliage, then this particular type here, which is the purple variant of quanzan, is very nice as well. And if you're looking for something that will flower a little earlier and still make a very nice, shapely, elegant flowering cherry, then take a look at this very nice variety here that's called Prunus okami, developed by a man they nicknamed Cherry Ingram. He was fascinated by Japanese cherries, and in 1930, in his arboretum in England, he raised this hybrid, which is now probably one of his most popular introductions. It's a gorgeous little tree, grows to about 25 to 20 foot wide or thereabouts, and flowers in abandon with lots of beautiful pink flowers very early on. But also, I want to show you that I'm very fond of the varieties and hybrids of our native redbuds. They're kind of like I was talking about earlier. They combine both beautiful foliage on many of them, but also some of them have a lovely weeping habit, and of course those beautiful little pea-like flowers that it carries early in the spring that lights up our landscapes. And they don't grow too big, so they make a perfect little garden tree. Now, when you're out and about looking around the garden centres, let me tell you a couple of points to look for when you're looking at choosing the tree that's right for your garden. Now, a few moments ago, I mentioned about how I was going to show you how to plant a container grown tree, and that's what these are, trees that are grown in this container. There's a big difference between container grown and containerized. Containerized is when the plant has been taken and put into the pot for a relatively short time, and it may or may not have an established root system. These plants are growing in this container. They come as a complete unit, and we're going to talk in a few moments about what to look for in the most important part of the tree, which is the bit you don't see, the root system. That is the most important part of the tree. When you're looking for a specimen to bring home, obviously you want nice, healthy, vigorous growing plants. Obviously, it would be nice to have straight stems, and it's very important to have a well-shaped head, because that's going to be the foundation of how that tree is going to grow later in life. And one of the big advantages of having a container grown tree is that it gives a lovely wide window of planting and selecting the tree. Quite literally, because these are complete units, you can plant them anytime between early spring right through the spring months, into the summer, into the fall, and even during the winter time too, if you can get a spade in the ground. So that's the beautiful thing about them. We try to grow these plants, as you see, to be big enough to make an impact in the garden, and yet small enough to be able to transport easily and to get off to a really good start in your site. And the other nice thing about a container grown tree is that you can take your time. It, as I say, is a complete unit. So when you bring it home, you can look around and see where's the right place that you want to put it in. But there is one thing that is important, and that is that before you plant it, you give it a good drink of water. Now, you should try to get it planted as soon as possible when you bring it home. But as long as you water it well and keep it watered, it will continue to grow in this container. So before you plant it, make sure to give it a good drink of water. And if you think that you're not going to be able to get round to planting it for a little while, then simply just keep watering it. But also, you can take the plant and set it into somewhere like here, a sheltered corner where it's going to be protected from the wind, and as long as you keep watering it, it should be fine until you get time to get it planted. And if you haven't picked up on it yet, the plant that I'm going to use in my planting demonstration is this stunning variety of redbud. This is Cercis flamethrower, a spectacular variety that we featured elsewhere here on this channel. So if you want to find out more about it, take a look. You'll find there a video that tells you all about its incredible features. This is the plant that created quite a stir in 2021 at the Chelsea Flower Show in London when they voted it the Plant of the Year. Now, when you get your plant home, what I like to do is to set it out in the site that I'm thinking about planting it in. And then what I do is I go around and look to see what the tree is going to look like from different directions. If it's down at the end of the garden, go down and take a look, see what it looks like that direction. Go into the house and take a look and see what it looks like out through the window. In other words, take your time, make sure that you have it in the right position. And sometimes I'll even leave it there for a day or two just to get used to the fact and to think about where it's at, because where it's planted, it's going to be there for the rest of its life. Now, the other thing I do, particularly with deciduous trees like this, is look to see if I can use them as a screening tree. They're wonderful because they're usually pretty fast growing, and therefore if you've got somewhere in the perimeter of your garden something that's undesirable, something that you'd rather not see, if you take it and strategically position the plant in that position, you can probably screen out some of the things that are not what you'd want to be seen. They're great for disguising things like perhaps a neighbor's front door, or some windows, or a swimming pool, or a patio, or somewhere where you're perhaps in between two decks of houses. If you take a tree that grows up tall and narrow, it provides that wonderful, almost instant screen that is pretty much going to screen most of it during the times when we're likely to be outside. Yes, deciduous trees like this don't have leaves in wintertime, but from spring through summer and into the fall, they'll provide plenty of screening. And the other thing I love about trees is that there are superb things for marking special events. Things like birthdays and anniversaries, special occasions, something that you're celebrating, somebody come to visit, get them to plant a tree in your garden. And especially if you've got little ones at home, get them to plant the tree with you. I know in my own case that recently my daughter, who's now a grown woman, told me that she went back to visit a place that we used to live in, the beautiful Abercorn Estates. And she reminded me that as a little girl, she and I planted a tree. And guess what? When she went back there, the first thing she looked for was her tree. And there it was, a beautiful specimen. And I also remember going to visit a garden where the parents had planted a tree to mark the birth of each of their children. And there in the garden, as we walked out, 3 children at different stages ran up to each of their trees. This is my tree, this is my tree, and this is my tree, which I thought was a beautiful thing to do. So by all means, if you're thinking about planting a tree, use it as a celebration of some sort of event. Now today, I'm pleased to tell you that we're also celebrating by planting this tree. And that is that we're very pleased to say that the first of our YouTube videos, one that we filmed on how to or should you prune a hydrangea, has reached over 1 million views. So we're planting this tree to celebrate that, and it's really nice that we're able to share that with you, because of course you, in all of your viewing statistics, have had a hand in it too. So think about using your trees somewhere in your garden to celebrate a special event. So let's assume that we're happy with the site that we're going to plant this tree in. Now it may be that you're right out in the countryside, there's no drainage, drains in underneath, and you're well away from things like utilities. But if you're in town, or particularly if you're working with a new site that you're not sure of, you should probably call before you dig. 811 is the locator service offered by the states. It's free. You call them, and then in a couple of days they will send out people who will be able to check the area to make sure that there aren't any utilities in underneath where you're intending to dig. Now when it comes to planting, it's important that you dig a good sized hole. You dig one that's about twice the size of the pot. And as you see, I'm kind of marking the ground here. There's the old saying in gardening, spend a cent on the plant and $1 on the hole. And then it's really just a matter of excavating the hole. So I'm going to set the tree off to the side here. The first thing I'm going to do is to save the mulch that we have down here on the site. And as you see, with a shovel, you can just remove this. It might be that if, say, you were planting in a lawn, in a grass area, the first thing you would do would be to remove the turf, because grass roots are really quite vigorous and would create a lot of competition for the newly transplanted tree. So eliminate that competition and start off with a little circular bed or a larger bed if that's what you're doing, and you'll find then that the tree will get off to a much better start. So now that I've removed and saved most of the mulch, it's really just then a matter of going around and excavating the hole. So now, as you see, I've dug a hole here that's about twice or maybe 3 times the width of the container. Just if you're thinking about it, dig on the generous size, don't skimp on the size of the hole. Now the important thing is to make sure that we got the depth right for the tree. And at that point, what I want to do is to show you what I was talking about earlier. You remember I was saying about how the important thing is the bit that you don't see, the root system. Well, let me knock this pot off here. And incidentally, this is how you do it. If you catch the tree here at the base and then just knock the pot like this, you'll see that it comes off pretty easily. But also what I want to do is to show you, two things. The first is I want to show you what they call the root flare. This is the point where when you get in here and scratch back the loose compost on the top of the plant, you'll find the point where the tree begins to grow out at its original level. So you scratch back till you find that point, and that's the point that when we put it in the hole needs to be about level with the surrounding grade. If anything, maybe even a little proud of it. But also the important thing I want to show you is down here. Look at this root system. See how finely fibrous it is here, and there's no spiraling roots. Spiraling roots are the things to watch out for in container grown trees. This is where the tree root has grown out, it's hit the side of the pot and then grows round in a spiral. And obviously, if you think about it for a moment, when a tree grows naturally, its roots spread out horizontally to be stable. If you've got a spiraling root system, obviously something that starts over here and then grows out in this direction and goes over there is likely to twist and cant in a windy, stormy day like today, especially if it gets a big heavy head. So that's why it's important that you don't have any spiraling roots on the base of your plant. If that happens, then it's important that you tease out the root ball. In this case, you really don't need to do that too much. You can do it a little bit because there's no spiraling roots, as you see. And that's because one of the important things that we do is we go through a special process in growing our trees that stops that root spiraling happening. It's the sort of thing that we do every day here on the nursery. If there's something we can do to make the tree a little better, if there's something we can do to grow our plants to a higher standard, then we'll do it. We worry about the cost afterwards, but the most important thing is to grow the trees, grow the plants to the highest possible quality. And here's what we do. If I show you in this pot that I have here, you'll see that in the inside of the pot we've treated it with copper. And what happens is when the tree root goes out, it hits the copper, the tip of the root dies, it then makes all of this fine fibrous root system here on the sides of the pot, and that's why when this settles in and grows on its site, it will be first of all nice and stable as a mature plant, but also the transplanting of it is going to be a lot more successful, because guess what? We've got all of these fine little fibrous roots that are going to be rooting out into the newly transplanted hole. So if I show you that in a little bit more detail, because it is really rather important. If you buy some trees and you find that they have this spiraling root system, they'll be thick, you'll see them. They're usually down here in the bottom third of the pot, and you'll see that they run round in a circular fashion. It's important that you tease those open, and in bad cases you might have to actually physically cut the roots too to stop them from going around in a circular fashion. Sometimes people will go through and suggest that you rough up the root ball a little bit, and if you want to do that, that's fine. But really, honestly, this tree has such a nice fibrous root system that this is really beautifully ready for transplanting, and honestly, I don't think you need to rough that up a little bit if you don't want to. You can go through and give it a little bit of opening up, as you see, but really I don't know that you need to be doing it. And going back to the root flare for a moment, let me tell you that that's the point where the roots spread out from the top of where it was grown in the nursery and where the stem begins. And you just see the markings that's on here. That is the layer that goes, and we're very careful when we're planting our trees to make sure that we don't plant them too deep in the pots. So therefore you don't really even have to do a whole lot of exposing the root system like I'm doing here. Incidentally, this is the graft union. This is where the rootstock came out. This is where the tree was budded. This is the rootstock variety here, and this is the variety that the little Cercis flamethrower grows out from. If you ever see little bits of growth and buds coming from this part here, then it's important to remove those, because those are the suckers and they're going back to probably just an ordinary green red bud. So now that we've determined where the flare is, we've examined the root system to make sure there aren't any spiraling roots on there, we're ready to check it to see at what depth we need to put it in the hole. So now what I usually do is just check with the end of my shovel or spade. So there, it's about that depth, and I'll check the bottom of the hole here, and that seems to be about right. Maybe it might be a little on the high side, in which case I'll take a little bit more out of the bottom of the hole. Now, one thing that's important to mention to you about the hole, and that is, particularly in my front garden, sometimes on new development sites, I swear it, or in my front garden, that the builder probably had every cement mixer and earth moving equipment in the whole of the state rocking back and forward on the garden at some point, and underneath the ground was really compacted and hard. Now this soil here is perfect, it's really good, but if you come across a hard layer in underneath, and I'll move the tree out of the way so that you can see, if you come across a hard compacted layer down there, then you probably need to break it up with something like a mattock, just to make sure that you bust through that level, so that then if there's a pan, you're able to get good drainage. And if you're wondering ever about whether the soil is going to be free draining or not, there's a simple test you can do, and that is that you take a bucket of water and pour it into the bottom of the hole, and then watch to see what happens. If the water drains away, then you know your drainage is fine. If, on the other hand, the water lies in the bottom of the hole and takes for ages to drain away, then obviously you need to perhaps look for another spot somewhere else. So that's a couple of things about the planting of the hole. Now that we think we have the level right, let's see how the tree looks in that sort of situation. I'll just remove this little protective wrapper that was put on it to protect the stem during shipping, and then let's try it in the hole and see how that looks. Actually, when I see it now, it looks a little low, so we're going to put in some soil and bring up the level a little bit, and then check it and see how that looks. So now I've added a little bit of soil in at the bottom of it. I think I have the height about right. Just make sure that the soil I put in the bottom is reasonably firm, because obviously if that's loose, the tree is going to sink in eventually. So just don't pack it down, but just make sure it's firm. And then let's try the tree in again and see how that works. That looks about good, and the way to test that is, as you see, if you put your shovel down, you'll see that the level of the tree, or the shovel here, is about level with it and about the top of the tree. So that shows that it's about the right level there. In other words, that I've got the depth about right. Now, one other thing about trees, and for that matter, all garden plants, they always have a face. So what I like to do is to turn it around and look at it and see if one side looks a little better than the other. And it's incredible. We go to a lot of trouble to shape all our trees and plants to be nice and consistent and well shaped. But nature is nature, and there's always, what I say, the face of a plant that looks a little better on one side than the other. The next thing, and this looks to be a nice full space, that when you're viewing the tree from here out the front door of our office, this is going to be presenting the best side of it. And then the important thing is to make sure that the tree is plumb. Make sure that it's vertical, and that means standing back and looking at it from different directions, just to make sure that you've got it positioned nicely in the hole and in its final place. So now that we've prepared the planting hole, got the depth right, looked at the root ball, etc., let me take you now and show you the final stage, and that is adding organic matter to the base of the hole and also the backfill. This is planting compost, and I'm a big believer in using this planting compost both in the backfill and also in the base of the hole. The reason that I believe so much in it is that I think it's very important to wean the root ball of the tree into the surrounding soil. So that's why I mix it up in the bottom of the hole to make sure that it's mixed in with the parent soil. I fluffed it up again, so just going to firm it down just a little bit, just lightly firm it down, and then reposition the tree in the hole, putting it in the way that we determined was the best face of the plant, putting it in here in the center of the hole, checking again the level, and that's about right. And now it's time to backfill the soil back into it. And the reason that I like to mix in the organic matter with the parent soil is because this tree is grown in a totally organic mix. The compost we use is a byproduct from the timber industry, so it's 100% organic matter. And then of course the mineral soil that's here, it's important to get the medium to be a transition for the new roots to grow out into the surrounding soil. And over the years, when I've planted trees, occasionally I've found that they were in the wrong spot. Somebody changed their mind or whatever, and we had to go in about a week or 10 days later and move the tree. And to my amazement, I found that in that short period, the white roots had grown out as if they were smelling and sensing this organic matter in the soil. So I think it's important to get the transition between the organic root ball and the mineral soil, and then get it so that it will root out into that. And of course the organic matter here is a lovely reserve of plenty of moisture already in it, so it forms the perfect medium when you mix it up with the parent soil for the new roots to grow out into. So that's why I think it's important to mix up the organic matter with the mineral soil and then backfill it in around the tree. Now, years ago, to tell you a story, my next door neighbor used to laugh at me. I used to go across and help him plant some things. And when we'd be backfilling it like this, I would be telling him, that's a bit of good tasty stuff, meaning that it was something that the roots would like to grow into. And he used to get a kick out of this because I used the word tasty. I'm thinking like roots, and that's why he liked the way that I was describing how the tree was going to grow into the soil. And the other thing about adding the organic matter into the backfill too is that obviously it's going to help with moisture absorption too. It's going to keep the moisture there for when the new roots grow out. So I've now backfilled it roughly level with the top of the tree, which is here, and now it's just a matter of going in and gently firming the soil to make sure that we get the root ball in contact with the newly backfilled soil. So that means that we now are ready to go to the next stage, which is to create a little basin around the front of the tree here. And because this tree is planted on a gentle slope, we're going to build it up a little bit here on the front, keeping out from the neck of the tree, keeping out from the base of the tree. As you see, I'm keeping this level here, but just building a little reservoir along the front of it here, and that will help to trap the water when we apply it. And as you see, I've now built a little shallow ridge here on the front of the sloping hill, which when we water will help to retain the moisture on this sloping site. And now really the last thing to do is just apply a layer of mulch. Now I'm using the mulch that was here already on the site. You would probably be able to put down a couple of inches of mulch. The important thing is that you only put a little light layer in at the crown of the plant here. The tree will love a couple of inches out here, but in at the crown of the plant, in at the base of the stem here, it's important that that has only got a little tiny shallow layer. So let's spread out the rest of the mulch here, and then I'll show you the last and final stage. And that is to give the tree a good drink of water. As you see, I've got a rose on here. I'm just applying the water around the top of the root ball, giving it a good drink. Now, the critical time on a newly transplanted tree is about 3 or 4 weeks after it's been planted, and especially if we get any dry, prolonged periods, you're going to have to keep an eye on the watering. It's important that you don't totally saturate the site, but at the same time, make sure to give it a good drink. If I was to guess, I would say somewhere about a couple of gallons of water to get it started. Now, as to give you guidance as to how frequently or otherwise you should water, that's a little difficult because it obviously depends on the weather, whether we get rain and how frequently and how much. Also on the soil conditions, how free draining it is, and a little bit also on the variety. But in general, I would say you should probably water at least once a week. Give it a gallon and a half, give it a good soak and let it soak down in. And then if you see it starting to get a little dry on the top, scratch the surface, see what's going on, and then give it a little bit of water too. Just make sure not to oversaturate it, and also make sure to water it regularly until you see the plant getting nicely established, and that usually takes maybe 5 to 6, maybe even 8 weeks. So just keep an eye on the watering, and then you should see that it will grow in here, settle down, produce lots of growth, and you'll have a tree that will of course last for years. Now there's 2 more points I want to make. The first is that you probably noticed we didn't put down any fertilizer when we were planting it. That's because in the compost that we grow our trees, it's got a slow release fertilizer that continues to feed the plant long after you have planted it. And the critical thing with a newly transplanted tree is just to get it established in the ground. Next spring, when it's established its root system and is ready to grow, you can go in if you want and give it a little dressing of fertilizer. And the other thing you will have noticed is that we're not using any staking. I believe that trees grow better on their own when they're given the opportunity, like this one, to gently move in the breeze. The other thing that's important is with that heavy root ball on there, it's already nice and stable. And sometimes if you stake a tree, the tree will grow to depend upon the stake, and then if the stake gets rotted or breaks out, and sometimes the tree then will get so big that it topples over, it's become dependent on the stake. If you're in a particularly windy site and you've got a tree with a lot of foliage that's getting a lot of resistance, and you're seeing it beginning to rock in at the base of the plant here, then of course you could come in and drive in a couple of stakes to the side, use a stretchy tie, and that will help to stabilize it until the plant gets established. Other than that, I really don't think that you need to worry, because with all of these big heavy root balls underneath, it's already well anchored, and with that little bit of give in the site, the tree will settle in and make its own anchorage. So that's how you plant a container grown tree. Thanks for watching, and thanks also for joining in our celebration. I look forward to the day when perhaps I'll be able to welcome you back and show you a whole forest of commemorative trees, marking our achievements here with our Overdevest YouTube channel. This is David Wilson. Enjoy your gardening. It's good for us, and it's very good for our environment too.